everybody has their faves, you know, the ones you think, yep, got to watch, got to listen to what they have to say. Two of mine were both speaking today during the House markup on legislation debates. Jasmine Crockett and Katie Porter. Enjoy. Understatement, enjoy.
Signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Do any other members wish to speak on, do any other members wish to be recognized? Ms. Crockett. Chair recognizes Ms. Crockett for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk.
Will the clerk please report the amendment?
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6283 as offered by Ms. Crockett of Texas.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentlelady from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes to explain her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As members of the Oversight Committee, it's our job to examine the issues and increase transparency and oversight on problems facing the American people. And once we do, we can develop tools and legislative solutions to address these problems. I agree we need to ensure PBMs do not take advantage of their role or power to force companies, pharmacies, or beneficiaries to pay higher prices just to benefit themselves. We also need to make sure that how we change the PBMs operate will actually result in price decreases for those needing life-saving medications and increased reimbursement rates for our local independent pharmacies. I'm offering this amendment today because before restructuring our healthcare system, it's imperative that we understand the complete role PBMs and others play in a larger drug market system. My amendment is simple but essential step to ensure we have the necessary information and data to make sure PBMs are doing their job to decrease drug cost and what Congress must do with entities like Big Pharma to do the same. We need to examine what particular barriers to entry exist in the PBM market to make it more competitive and bring prices down. We need to examine how frequently PBMs are steering to pharmacies that are vertically integrated at the expense of independent pharmacies. We need to examine if PBMs are forcing non-vertically integrated pharmacies to pay more compared to those that are vertically integrated, and how pervasive this is and how damning its effects are on our community pharmacists. We also need to examine whether forcing flat fees on PBMs will achieve this goal of bringing down drug costs compared to other solutions like capping revenue percentages. In short, we need more answers, and we need to know whether these proposed changes will actually result in savings. By requiring a certification by OPM that the changes in this bill will result in lower premiums, and by directing the Government Accountability Office to publish a report with this information, as well as recommend legislative actions for lowering prescription drug prices for carriers and covered individuals, improving lower cost and better competition in the pharmaceutical supply chain, and developing PBM transparency requirements, we will be extremely well equipped to achieve our common goal of lowering drug costs and making sure Big Pharma is not taking advantage of the little guys. And with that, I will.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize myself to speak in opposition of this amendment. I've long supported efforts to examine the PBM industry and its impacts on patients, premiums, healthcare costs, and pharmacies. I've also called for improving transparency in PBM practices and reforms to reduce the price of prescription drugs. However, I'm unable to support this amendment because it would condition the bill's implementation on a certification unique to federal practice, enabling an unelected bureaucrat to determine whether they want to implement the will of Congress. The Drug Act is important because we need Congress to step up, take action to inspire real change to address the problems of rising prescription drug costs, not allow unelected bureaucrats to dictate policy outcomes. For these reasons, I respectfully oppose the amendment offered by Ms. Crockett from Texas. Do any other members wish to speak on the amendment, on the Crockett amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the Crockett amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Chairman,
The amendment is not agreed to.
I'd ask for a recorded vote.
A recorded vote is ordered. As previously announced, further proceedings on the question will be postponed. And we're going to suspend for a moment as we try to finalize the proposed Lynch amendment. For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the ranking member, and Mr.
You have an
Mfuma.
amendment at the desk.
I do have an amendment, a revised amendment at the desk. Thank you.
I think we've distributed the revised amendment. Will the clerk designate the amendment?
Amendment number 2 to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 6283 as offered by Mr. Lynch of Massachusetts.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment will allow the Inspector General of the Office of Personnel Management full access to information relating to contracts entered into by the Federal Employee Health Benefit Plan and PBM. So this is narrower than the original amendment. The data would include, as described before, reports and methodology used to calculate and allocate rebates, information on average wholesale prices, et cetera. And after making those edits suggested by the majority, the amendment includes data from FEHBP contracts entered into by PBMs. This will highlight any discrepancies within the FEHBP. And this transparency is essential, I think, to ensuring the proper oversight of those PBMs. I do want to thank the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Mfume, for his assistance in this, and also Mr. Krishnamurthy as well as the ranking member, and the chairman and majority and minority staff. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I recognize myself. I support this amendment. I think this is proof of good faith effort by this committee in a bipartisan manner to address one of the biggest challenges that I think both sides of the aisle agree we have in America, and that's the rising cost of prescription drugs. So this is a great example of our sincere commitment to work together on this issue, to move forward, for this committee to lead on this issue, and I will support the Lynch amendment. Do any other members wish to speak on the amendment? Seeing none, the question is on the amendment, on the Lynch amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the Lynch amendment is agreed to. Our next item for consideration is H.R. 7219, Information Quality Assurance Act of 2023. The clerk will please designate the bill.
H.R. 7219, the Information Quality Assurance Act.
We got the wrong bill. Okay, I apologize. We're going to back up. The question is now on the amendment in the nature of a. What are we doing? What are we doing?
You are correct.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's start all over. Our next item for consideration is H.R. 7219, the Information Quality Assurance Act of 2023. The clerk will please designate the bill.
H.R. 7219, the Information Quality Assurance Act of 2023, a bill to require agencies to rely on the best reasonably available scientific, technical, demographic, economical, financial, and statistical information to support new rules and guidance.
Without objection, the bill shall be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. Without objection, so ordered. The chair recognizes himself to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute. The clerk will please designate the amendment.
An amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 7219, as offered by Mr. Comer of Kentucky.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the substitute will be considered as original text for the purposes of further amendment. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for a statement on the bill and the amendment. I'm pleased to support this bill, the Information Quality Assurance Act. Each year, thousands of regulations are imposed as an added burden on the American public. The Code of Federal Regulations in which these rules are housed spans 243 volumes that contain over 180,000 single-spaced pages. Agency guidance explaining these regulations to the public likely spans millions more pages. If we must have rules imposed by federal regulatory agencies, we should, at the very least, ensure that regulatory agencies rely on the best available information. Unfortunately, agencies do not rely on the best available information to create the regulation. Year after year, the federal courts are clogged with litigation brought by regulated parties who point out that federal agencies have acted based on flawed information. Over the years, Congress has tried to improve the situation. In 2000, Congress enacted the Information Quality Act, which charged the Office of Management and Budget and each federal agency to adopt guidelines to assure agencies relied on high-quality information. In 2015, Congress enacted the Foundations of Evidence-Based Policymaking Act, expanding on the Information Quality Act to further ensure agencies use high-quality information. Still, year after year, disputes arise over whether regulators are basing their decisions on the best quality information available. Every year, courts strike down agency rules that do not rely on adequate information. Every year, agency guidance that does not rely on the best information forces regulated parties down pathways that do not make sense. The Information Quality Assurance Act takes several major but straightforward steps to solve that problem. For the first time, it requires that the information on which agencies rest their rules and guidance be the best reasonably available information. It also includes several additional terms to make sure agencies are finally held to that standard. This legislation will improve the quality of agency decision-making, improve the acceptability of new rules and guidance, and avoid the need for many disputes over agencies' use of information to go to court. I urge my colleagues to support this bipartisan bill, and I thank Representatives McClain and Porter for their introduction of this important bipartisan legislation. I now yield to the ranking member for his statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The Information Quality Assurance Act is bipartisan legislation introduced by our colleagues, Representatives Porter and McClain. It would require the Director of OMB to update guidance issued under the Information Quality Act. That guidance is more than 20 years old now, and much work has been done by Congress and the Executive Branch on these issues in the meantime. The Evidence-Based Policymaking Act, the Data Act, and the Open Government Act are just a few of a generation of new laws requiring updated guidance. Updated guidance would help agencies to better ensure the quality of information and evidence used in promulgating rules. The new guidance would ensure that the best reasonably available scientific, demographic, economic, financial, or statistical information is relied on in the regulatory process. The bill continues the practices of the Information Quality Act that allow for public input on the information submitted and mechanisms for OMB to report any complaints to Congress. I'd like to thank the majority for working closely with the minority and the administration in crafting this bill. It's a good, solid, bipartisan result, and I fully support it. I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Do any members seek recognition? Chair recognizes Ms. Porter from California.
Having quality information can be the difference between making a great decision and a terrible decision. And as a single mom, I spend a lot of time at stores making decisions about what to buy for my 3 kids. With 2 teenage boys in the house, it often feels like the cupboards get emptied faster than I can fill them up. When I'm shopping for my family, I rely on the best available information to decide what to buy. I look at ingredients to see if there are any irritating chemicals in the shampoo. I check out the price tags and the price per ounce so I can figure out which brand of laundry detergent is going to wash all of those loads of dirty clothes. When I need to pick up more olive oil, I inspect the bottle to see where it was made and if it has any quality certifications. Imagine what kinds of decisions I might make if I had bad information. I might accidentally buy itchy shampoo, pricey laundry detergent, and rip off olive oil. I always make better decisions when I have the best information in front of me. As decision makers, federal agencies are no different. If we want the best outcomes, we need federal agencies to use the best information. The Information Quality Assurance Act would require federal agencies to rely on the best reasonably available scientific, technical, demographic, economic, and statistical information and evidence in their rules and guidance. Just like Americans want the best information when they are shoppers and decision makers, Americans want to have confidence that federal agencies are making informed decisions based on the best data. This bill helps provide that certainty. But this legislation doesn't just expect Americans to take the government's word that it's relying on the best available information. Federal agencies would also be required to publish their rulemaking guidelines on their websites for all Americans to be able to read for themselves. Additionally, agencies would have to disclose the methods and data that they relied on to produce their guidelines. This level of transparency will allow the public to understand how federal agencies developed their rules and to verify that they relied on the best available information. As a former professor, I always had to explain my methods and my sources for anything that I published to have credibility. Allowing others to check for errors, review the quality of data, and highlight any assumptions made my research stronger. And the same will be true for our federal government. I'm proud to support the Information Quality Assurance Act, and I thank my Republican colleague and friend, Congresswoman McClain, for leading this common sense bipartisan legislation with me. I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back, and we will. We are going to suspend for 2 minutes while Mrs. McClain, the sponsor of the bill, rushes back.